34 days from the election and just 4 days from the next presidential debate, a life-threatening storm is now bearing down on the United States as residents up and down the East Coast scramble to get out of harm's way. That's where we begin tonight's edition of the Kelly File. Welcome, everybody. I'm Megyn Kelly. Tonight, we have big news from the campaign trail and a big threat in the Atlantic. We'll talk 2016 in a moment, but we have to start with the massive hurricane that could now score a direct hit on the United States in less than 24 hours. Millions are bracing for the impact of this thing. Look at it. Hundreds of thousands are now evacuating their counties ahead of Hurricane Matthew. It is the first major hurricane threat for the United States in a decade. The monster storm killed nearly a dozen people in the Caribbean already on its march toward Florida and the East Coast. Governors in 4 states already declaring an emergency. President Obama urging Americans to take this very seriously, and Florida Governor Rick Scott warning of the possibility of, quote, massive destruction that we haven't seen in years. We've got every angle of the storm covered for you, and we'll be updating you on its track throughout the night and on its progress. Meanwhile, just 4 days remain before the second of 3 presidential debates, one that campaign watchers say could provide a reset of sorts for Donald Trump. This showdown will be unlike any other we'll see, with 2 moderators hosting, CNN's Anderson Cooper and ABC's Martha Raddatz, in a town hall format, meaning half of the questions will actually come directly from the voters. The candidates are keeping very different schedules in the run-up to Sunday night. Mrs. Clinton is off the campaign trail, attending fundraisers and focusing on her debate prep. Mr. Trump has been hitting the campaign trail hard in Nevada today. We hear he's going to ramp up his prep work later this week. Regardless, both campaigns say they're ready to go.
The town hall format is really a sweet spot for him because he's the one out there with voters every single day. I'm not sure the town hall format is great for Hillary Clinton either. She seemed much more comfortable behind the podium. We've seen her out there with people. That doesn't seem like her most comfortable arena.
I'm looking forward to our next debate next Sunday. I thought the first one went pretty well.
In moments, we'll talk strategy with Stuart Stevens, who is a campaign strategist for Mitt Romney. But we begin tonight with Jason Miller, Trump campaign senior communications advisor. Great to see you, Jason. Thanks for being here.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
Let's just start with that. She really, listen, the polls say that she won that first debate, but you tell me whether she would do better to be a little less glib and a little more likable on the subject. I mean, self-deprecating is not really Trump's thing either, but you tell me whether she's going to win over voters on the fence by the "it went pretty well" thing.
Well, I think the "why am I not 50 points" a headline really gives you some insight into Secretary Clinton's thinking and just her attitude towards voters. And I think especially with the town hall format that we're going to see on Sunday night, this is really an opportunity for Mr. Trump to do well. I think this is a format that allows him to connect with people. And I don't know if Secretary Clinton can memorize enough lines to do well on Sunday.
What about, we saw Trump in the primary season in an Anderson Cooper town hall, and he kind of got in somebody's face. I mean, the guy asked him a tough question about why he said George W. Bush knew about 9/11 before it happened, or intentionally lied to get us into Iraq, one of those 2 dicey things. And Trump was like, look, it's fine. I'm not getting your vote. I mean, has he been told it's not good to yell at the voters? Be nice to the people asking the question, even if they're snarky questions.
But people love him in these town halls. He tells it like he sees it. He calls it like it is. It's not, like I said, not a bunch of pre-programmed lines or things he's been memorizing. But I think he'll do well on Sunday. I think we're actually going to be doing a town hall tomorrow night in New Hampshire, 7 o'clock. So that'll be
it's like a little practice.
He'll be Mr. Trump does a whole lot of town halls and meets with and talks with voters all the time. But he'll be one that we do in advance, and he'll be doing debate prep tomorrow and Friday and getting ready.
Are we going to see a different Trump at this debate than we saw at the last one? Because, you know, some of the criticisms of him were punch back, right? Don't defend everything she lobs your way. Don't be on defense, but punch back, punch at her, and punch relentlessly, actually, as the night goes on.
Well, so our goal going into the very first debate was to make sure that it was clear who is the insider, who is the outsider, who is the one who's going to fight to change the economy, who is the one who's going to fight to make our country more safe and secure. So we felt from our end that we were able to go and accomplish that. I think this time we're going to start getting a little bit more into some specifics. I think you're going to see really the consumer benefit of what a Trump presidency will do for the American people. And I think that's where things are going to start to separate, because that's where Secretary Clinton has a tough time really connecting with people.
Does he get that she laid a trap for him with that Alicia Machado thing that he walked right into, and then he stayed in the trap for 5 days?
Well, look, Mr. Trump is going to defend himself, and I think it's only right that if someone's lobbing a political attack at him, that he can go and defend himself.
Why? But it didn't help him. It didn't help. His ardent supporters, some of them, were so disappointed that he stayed in that ugly place for 5 days when he had so much momentum behind him. They don't want to see him do that again.
But what they absolutely loved is that he did well through that entire debate, and that he stood up and he fought for himself and he didn't back down.
Right, but we're talking about, you know, how they say in like drug addiction, the first step is admitting you have a problem, right? The first step is admitting that was a mistake. Don't walk into the trap. Don't stay in the trap. Don't enjoy the trap. Don't extend the trap by 5 days.
So I disagree with you. I saw the debate a bit differently. I thought Mr. Trump did fantastic, and there's a reason why we're seeing these crowds, and we're seeing this energy and seeing this excitement. But let's look ahead to Sunday, what we think is going to come up.
Yep.
And that's the one where I've reviewed a lot of game tape of Secretary Clinton.
Yep.
She's always good on the first answer. She can come through and she'll have memorized, probably I'd assume, a couple hundred lines. She'll have those down. But as you start getting to those second questions, those third questions, that's where she gets tripped up, and that's where she has a tough time relating with people. She can't really connect, and I think that's because I think the Clintons are so separated from regular people, and they can't quite connect. I mean, how do you go from not being able to pay either of your mortgages when you leave the White House to being worth $200 million without ever doing so much as billing an hour of legal work or producing anything or winning Powerball or anything else? And so they live in an alternate reality, and I don't think they get what it means to be in America.
They gave a lot of speeches. A lot of speeches that paid very, very well.
Would you pay him $500,000 for a speech?
But I do not give that kind of money away, and I think Bill Clinton's lived a very different life than I have.
But one other thing, though, I think it's important about Sunday, just one of the things we're seeing with the election overall, is where the energy and the enthusiasm is in this race, and it's clearly with Mr. Trump right now. I mean, we're seeing with Secretary Clinton that there's just, just small crowds, maybe 1,000, if she's lucky at some of these.
That's all true, but the crowd size does not determine what happens on Election Day. We saw that last time around with Mitt Romney.
Voter intensity is there for Mr. Trump. It's why we're seeing it in the polls. We feel pretty good about where we're at.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Megan.
Nice to see
Appreciate
you.
it.
Joining us now with more, Stuart Stevens, founding partner of Strategic Partners in Media. He served as a campaign strategist for Mitt Romney. I'll just pick up on that last point, though it may be painful for you, Stuart, because I remember seeing those swelling crowds for Romney, especially in the last couple of weeks before the election. It was incredible. And people thought, there's no way he's not going to win this. No way. And yet, as we now know, the crowd size was not predictive.
Well, it's a big country, and if you have a crowd of, say, 60,000 a day, and you still need to get to 65 million, it's going to take you about 5 or 6 years to reach those people. I think it's nice to have voter intensity,
and they do have it. They do have it behind Donald Trump.
I think Donald Trump has a smaller, intense following. The question here is it's about addition now. Everything you do should be about addition at this stage of a campaign. What new voters is Donald Trump adding to his coalition? All those voters only get to vote once. So a less enthusiastic voter and a more enthusiastic voter have the same power at the ballot box. So that's really, I think, going to be the challenge on Sunday night.
So don't you expect
Donald Trump to go out and actively reach out for more voters?
Don't you expect Trump to do that? I mean, don't you expect, given what happened to him in the wake of the first debate, he will change a bit and be maybe a little softer? I mean, he'll hit Hillary harder, but he'll be softer in dealing with the individual questioners at the town hall.
I don't know. It's a different format. It suits itself better to that. Personally, I think Donald Trump is still running against Donald Trump, and he should focus on telling people more about himself. He ought to ask people for a second look if you've decided not to vote for me. I think really it is a referendum on Donald Trump in that sense that he still has favorables that are under 40, and that just limits his growth.
What do you make of, I'll ask you the same question that I just asked about her with the, I thought the debate went pretty well. I get that her supporters love that. They're like, yeah, you go, girl. But these two candidates are fighting over this group in the middle that doesn't like either one of them, right? These people who haven't decided, they don't like her and they don't like him. You tell me whether that sort of, yeah, thing is going to go over well with these people.
Hillary Clinton has low favorables, but she has higher favorables than Donald Trump. Plus, she has a much bigger, better campaign. They've designed this campaign to place her in situations where she can do okay. They're not asking her to go out there and win this race, to carry this race on her back, like a sporting analogy. They believe that they have an organization that can deliver a campaign message and that she has passed that threshold that people can imagine her as President of the United States. For a lot of voters, Donald Trump has not passed that threshold. There's still a very high number of people who can't imagine Donald Trump being president. And I personally think that that's really what he should try to address on Sunday night.
And now they're both in their own version of a presidential protection program. With, you say, they've designed her situation so she's not in a place where she feels uncomfortable or is anything unexpected could come at her, which is why she sat for a half an hour with Mary J. Blige, the singer, which is why she did Entertainment Tonight this evening, which is why we just found out that when she went on the Steve Harvey show, she had every single question given to her in writing in advance, and then she feigned surprise as the questions were asked. And Donald Trump, with all due respect to my friend at 10 o'clock, will go on Hannity and pretty much only Hannity and will not venture out to the unsafe spaces these days, which doesn't exactly expand the tent for either one of them. There, that's my 2 cents. Stuart, I'll give you the last word.
I think that when you saw in the last debate, Hillary Clinton was delivering messages that really resonate with certain audiences. Her comments about African Americans and the legal system, I think the white voters like Hillary Clinton or not like Hillary Clinton, it just doesn't have the resonance it does with African Americans. I think they have a plan. They know what their vote goals are, and they know how to put together these coalitions.
Yeah, and we'll see, because the electoral map is looking better and better for her. Stuart, always a pleasure. Breaking tonight, new details from the National Hurricane Center on Matthew. The storm now has sustained winds of over 115 miles an hour. It's tracking straight toward the southeast coast of Florida. Moments ago, we got word that the Fort Lauderdale airport is shutting down completely tomorrow morning. We'll go to our weather center in moments for the very latest predictions. Meteorologist Rick Reichmuth is live in the Fox Weather Center for us tonight. Rick?
Boy, always such a great point. When you stay, you are putting somebody else's life in danger if they have to come get you. I'm so happy to hear Governor Haley say that. Here is the storm right now. Spent that time over Haiti and Cuba. Not a lot of time, but it was enough that it kind of disrupted a little bit of the structure of it. And so it's weakened down to 115 miles an hour. Still a major Category 3 storm. Don't be fooled by that. Latest satellite imagery representation right here. The latest images, all indications are that it is about to go through a strengthening cycle. We would generally see that during the overnight hours, and that's why we think it's going to get back up to a Category 4 storm. We have hurricane watches in effect all across the Georgia coast, all the way down throughout the Keys, but the hurricane warnings from right up here at Daytona Beach down towards Miami, and that's where we're going to be watching the brunt of this starting tomorrow afternoon. I also want to point out it goes inland. So Orlando, you are under a hurricane warning, not just a coastal event. And take a look at what one of our model predictions of the wind field does. By tomorrow, probably around noon, we've got tropical storm force winds around Miami. And then take a look at this, Megan, during tomorrow night, right around this time, potentially major hurricane winds right on shore here, and it tracks right along the coast all night tomorrow night, all throughout the day on Friday. The entire eastern coast of Florida looking to be pummeled by potentially a major hurricane starting tomorrow night.
We'll make sure that we are live on the air and covering that for everyone there. Rick, thank you.
You bet.
Well, it's political season, so you know that even before this storm makes landfall, it's already impacting this presidential race. Team Clinton decided this was a good time to make a big advertising buy on the Weather Channel in a series of major Florida markets, right? And some critics are questioning whether this move could actually end up angering some of the voters she's trying to reach. Joining me now, the new co-hosts of Perino and Steyerwalt. I'll tell you what. Do I have it right, Chris?
Oh, it's so beautiful. It sounds so good to hear.
I'll tell you what. Chris Steyerwalt, who's also our Fox News digital politics editor, and Dana Perino, former White House press secretary under President George W. Bush and co-host of The Five. You have too many titles. You're going to have to choose which ones you want. I don't have the time.
Well, that other show's just temporary, so that will go away soon.
Okay, well, let's live just with that other show title for now. Okay. I'm going to start with you, Dana, because you're here live in the set. ad buy on the Weather Channel by Hillary. I understand the goal in running for president is to reach people. Should she be doing that?
I think it depends on what the ads are. If it's if they're ads that are slash and burn against Donald Trump, I don't think that would be very welcome. But if they're ads that are uplifting, it might just have a positive impact. I also think that the impact of the storm is going to be so big that they might not have a lot of commercial breaks, because the impact of the storm is, if what Rick is saying actually ends up happening, we could be in a really dire situation for millions of people for a long period of time.
How does that play politically, Steigerwalt? Because, we saw with Superstorm Sandy, it did have an impact. And, you could argue it had an impact all the way to 2016 and cost Chris Christie a lot of Republican voters because he was hugging Barack Obama on the boardwalk, but he denies the hug. But they were exchanging little fuzzy animals that President Obama got him on the boardwalk. I keep saying to Governor Christie, because he's always like, there was no hug, and I keep saying, don't make me show the video of him winning you that little fuzzy bear. Okay, but anyway, how does that play, Chris?
Well, President Obama played it well. He took good advantage of that. Not only did he demonstrate bipartisanship by getting Chris Christie to accept his Care Bear, but he also was able to blame global warming. He even stayed on, brought his actual message points from the campaign into it. Meantime, Mitt Romney couldn't even get in the state. He couldn't get around. Christie told him to stay away, which is probably right, because what is Mitt Romney going to do other than stand around and have nice hair? It blows nicely as the breeze is coming in. Right, it's blowing as the breeze is coming in, but he ain't going to be able to do anything. So that's where running against an incumbent makes it harder, because Obama could go there, he could push his message about global warming and do other things. Here. But not the case here. We got nobodies. We got people who are a never was and a former. So what? And all they can do is stay away and hope that people from their parties, that the Republican governors of these states and that the president and his organization don't screw up, because if they do, it will be bad for them.
Dana, we also have a presidential debate this Sunday night, within 24 hours of this storm hitting landfall.
Yeah, so you're going to have, it could be upwards of 15 million and multiples of that that are going to be focused on the storm. They'll be paying little attention to the debate. Nobody pays attention as much as we do, but it's possible that night that you could end up with Trump, like a split screen with Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, and then the weather map or coverage, because people are going to want to know what is happening to their communities.
And what about, early voting, right? Because this is also going to impact North Carolina and Florida. And you tell me whether, turnout for that is a factor, or is this going to depress any of that or change any of that?
Well, I have to say, if I could defer to my co-host, who I believe is working on a data dive.
I'll tell you what, you may. Steigerwalt, that is your cue. See how well they work together?
I don't know any answers. I just defer to him.
Dana is sweating me on this data dive like crazy. I'm gonna come up with something. It's gonna be good, dadgummit. But the early voting is a huge factor, both in North Carolina and in Florida. If the storm is disruptive to a great degree, that will be harmful for Democrats who like early voting and like long voting periods, so that they can mobilize reticent voters or hard to get out voters. So Democrats want this to be over quickly and not massively disruptive, so they can take advantage of every day on the map.
That's fascinating.
But in Florida, you never know what's going to happen.
Look at Dana. We're sorry for putting your head over the satellite.
Well,
thank you for lowering
it. For FaceTime, I think it's probably good. Put it back.
Just Dana's little floating head above the storm. I don't know what we're trying to say about Dana. Like, I'm
having one of those weeks.
Okay.
This is what I'm saying.
Tears.
I know. Remember, she was crying last night. She was very verklempt by the vice presidential debate.
Only through one eye.
I gotta go. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Also tonight, while a series of new polls show Hillary Clinton gaining ground, one major survey consistently shows Donald Trump ahead. And those pollsters are here to explain what is going on. Plus, Obamacare now facing major new challenges, with reports surfacing that the law may not survive. Up next, our old friend Zeke Emanuel, the key Obamacare architect and renowned doctor, joins us with what went wrong and why. Stay tuned. Fox Extreme Weather Alert for you now. The U.S. military is sending hundreds of U.S. troops to evacuate to hurricane-battered Haiti, I'm told tonight, as we're getting reports of a rising death toll in that country. At least 26 people dead. You're seeing the latest track of the storm heading straight for Florida. And for the East Coast, nearly 2 million people have been urged to evacuate from their areas, and local reporters on the ground say a lot of people are planning to stay. Stay tuned for more updates throughout the evening. Well, Obamacare has suddenly exploded back into the headlines these days after mostly sitting on the bench as an issue in 2016. It started again when President Bill Clinton called the law crazy on Monday, drawing attention to some major challenges now facing the president's signature health care law. Fox News was among those questioning for years whether Obamacare was viable long-term based on some well-documented concerns from economists and some health insurance officials. And time again, some critics of the law, Fox News Channel included, were called out by the president himself. Watch.
We knew going into the debate that it would be subject to distortions. It was subject to some misleading information.
We're going to need everybody out there to make sure, get the right information. Just read a blog or, some commentary from some pundit that has a political agenda. Don't let people confuse you. Don't let them run the okey doke on you. Don't be bamboozled. If you talk to somebody who said, well, I don't know, I was watching Fox News and they said this horrible. See for yourself what the choices are, then make up your own mind. While good, affordable health care might seem like a fanged threat to the freedom of the American people on Fox News, it turns out it's working pretty well in the real world.
Tonight, we have one of the key architects of Obamacare, Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel, who joins us tonight. I last spoke with him more than 2 years ago. We'll show you some of that in a minute. But first, we turn to Trace Gallagher for the latest live from our West Coast newsroom. Trace?
Megan, one of the nation's largest insurers, Aetna, pretty much summed it up by saying that, quote, policyholders are turning out to be sicker and costlier than expected. And unless you have a balanced risk pool, meaning more younger and healthier people, it's impossible to provide affordable, high quality health care. So after losing $433 million over the past 2 years, starting in 2017, Aetna will stop selling Obamacare in 11 of the 15 states it now serves. United Healthcare, the nation's largest insurer, says it lost $1 billion over the past 2 years, and in 2017, it too will exit most health care exchanges. As a result, consumers in a third of the country will soon have only 1 or 2 insurance companies to pick from, and the lack of competition means big-time rate increases. For example, in Tennessee, Blue Cross Blue Shield is raising rates 62% in 2017. In Kentucky, Golden Rule Insurance is boosting rates 47%. In Iowa, Wellmark is upping premiums 42%, and the list goes on. The government is also hemorrhaging money, so if you're not getting hit with higher premiums, your tax dollars are certainly getting tapped. Many Republicans say they're still trying to repeal Obamacare, but now Democrats are also voicing concerns, the most famous being the former president. Watch.
So you've got this crazy system where all of a sudden 25 million more people have health care, and then the people are out there busting it sometimes 60 hours a week, wind up with their premiums doubled and their coverage cut in half. It's the craziest thing in the world.
Others think the way to cure what Clinton called the crazy system is to add the public option, an insurance plan offered by the government, kind of like the VA. And remember in 2009 when President Obama was giving his health care speech to a joint session of Congress, and when he said the Affordable Care Act would not cover illegal immigrants? South Carolina Congressman Joe Wilson shouted, "You lie." Well, now California is negotiating with the federal government to have Obamacare cover illegal immigrants. Megan.
Well, our next guest is known as a key architect of Obamacare, and we asked him about these kinds of problems when he visited the show back in the winter of 2013.
Don't you agree the system is going to collapse unless we get those young people to sign up? And
the president has given you a plan that will cover everyone. So if your employer decides he can't cover you or won't cover you, you have a safety net where you can get insurance. Is the exchange going to be a stable way to buy insurance without it going into a death spiral because we don't have enough people in it? Right. That's the key question. Right. And the answer to that question is yes. Going forward, it's going to be a stable place to buy insurance.
Joining me now, Vice Provost for Global Initiatives and Medical Ethics and Health Policy Department Chair at the University of Pennsylvania, Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel. Doctor, great to see you again. Thank you for being here. So let's just start with that.
Nice to be here.
Stable market. Obviously, it is not with this mass exodus of insurance companies, the decrease in competition, the enormous hikes in premiums in so many states and counties. Were you wrong?
Megan, Megyn, your reporter did a very nice job of cherry picking only the most extreme. They don't raise premiums across the board. Some have gone up higher than others, but
50+%.
The premium hikes are because they came in, they did miscalibrate the market, they were trying to get market share, and it is a correction. And you know, it is a problem that we do need to address. There's no doubt it needs to be addressed, but it's not across the board. And on average, we do not have higher than 15% increases in the premiums, and it's going to be a one-time increase to reflect
the on-average business doesn't help the person. Hold on, but the on-average person doesn't help the person in Arizona County who's got a 51% hike in their premiums. The people in Tennessee who have a 62% hike in their premiums.
Again, Megyn, what you're identifying is one product. There are many other products to choose from in those places. So
in many of these places, they only have one insurer, one plan to choose from, and one insurance company.
You can cherry pick, but it's not the average, and it's not what affects the majority of people.
But the average doesn't mean anything to the person who is affected by the high costs and by the single insurer.
The second thing is Republicans bear some of the responsibility for this. Remember, Marco Rubio eliminated some of the risk adjustment that actually buffered and helped the insurance companies in this situation.
Okay, but
he
that's
took
about
it out
the blame.
of the budget.
That's
and
about
that
blame.
is
I'm just talking about today.
Problem.
Okay, so there's plenty of blame to go around, but I'm talking about the situation.
No, it's not plenty of blame. It's Republicans.
Today.
It's Republicans.
You are the architect of the law, sir. Okay, so let's just start with you. When I get Marco Rubio here, we'll talk to him. You're the architect.
No, Megyn,
you said that it was going to be stable, and what we're hearing today from the chief executive of the National Association of Health Underwriters is, in many states, the individual market is in a shambles. Shambles, not stable.
Megyn, you're going to let me finish? You're going to let me finish? Okay. One of the things we built into the law was various ways of providing risk corridors and risk adjustment so that insurers would be protected against getting too many sick people, which is the heart of the problem.
Yep.
Marco Rubio in the Senate took that away and destabilize the market. When I told you 2 years ago it was going to be a stable market, those risk protections were in place, and the Republicans took it away.
Okay,
but
so
I might tell you,
so it's Marco Rubio and the Republicans. But let me ask you, because
they bear a major responsibility. Are there things we can do? Megyn,
we
let me
talked
just
about
finish.
the fact that there was a risk. We talked about the fact that there was a real risk that the young people would not sign up, that they'd rather pay the penalty, and you said they would sign up. And we talked about, and you said, look, the very poor people are going to be covered by Medicaid, and the next group of people, they will sign up.
Yes.
We have that exchange. It's the second soundbite from my control room. Can you play it? Watch. What we're being told right now is that the young people who you have said in your writings and you acknowledge are critical to the success of this plan are not signing up. Don't you agree the system is going to collapse unless we get those young people to sign up and start paying?
Let me explain something. First of all, we are planned to have people go on Medicaid. About half of the people who are supposed to be covered under 133% of the poverty line are supposed to get Medicaid. The people above 133% of the poverty line are going to get shop in the exchange.
Okay, but the young people are not signing up. They are choosing instead to pay the penalty, which is a problem. And for those people who are just above that price point where they can get Medicaid, they're not signing up either. The subsidies are not big enough, and what we're being told is that they've enrolled only 17% of those customers, only 17% of those people who make about 35 grand to 47 grand, only 17% have signed up. So you still have all these people without insurance. They can't afford it, and that's why you're not getting the young people in. You're not getting the healthy people in. So my question to you, doctor, is aren't the concerns that we talked about years ago coming to fruition to the detriment of the law and to those who were supposed to have been helped by it?
Look, we have actually had millions of people, 11 million people who've come into the exchange. Do we need to make adjustments in the interim? After 6 years, we need to see that things need to be changed. We've suggested some very simple adjustments that will make sense. First of all, from the time the penalty is going up, so it's actually going to be more real to more people.
You're going to force them to buy the insurance.
Wait a second. Let me finish,
No,
Megyn.
I'm just explaining what you mean by the penalty.
We have saved a tremendous amount of money, actually, contrary to what your person said. The federal government has actually been saving is projected to save between 2014 and 2019 about $1.5 trillion on lower spending. We could deploy some of that money to increase the subsidies and to make them more generous. We could make some adjustments and increase the penalty and take it more seriously for people. These are not major shocks to the system. These are minor adjustments to a system that to the Obamacare that will make it more viable.
I mean, the major
I would say the most important thing,
back, after 2010,
the most important thing is to put
enacted.
those risk corridors back in that Marco Rubio took out. That would actually stabilize things for insurance
You say that
companies.
11 million people have signed up. You were just on this show a couple years ago saying 34 million people. 34 million people will get coverage. Now it's down to 11.
Well,
11.
No. Get coverage through both Medicaid expansion and the exchanges. Now, what happened? We have over 20 million people.
8 million people already had insurance. And your number that you're throwing out there, they already had insurance that they liked. They got kicked off of those policies and then forced to buy a new one.
No, we did not get 8 million people kicked off. You're now saying an untruth.
Okay. All right.
We've got 20 million people who got coverage. And
it's not 20.
Many more millions, up to 4 million more people would have
12.
gotten coverage if places like Texas and Florida and Georgia would have expanded Medicaid as we wanted in the system.
All right.
Now, it wasn't the 32 we predicted, but it is 24 million, and that's a lot better than the previous system we had. Remember,
and
the
a lot of
previous
people were
system
not
was
insured and did
desirable,
get some coverage.
And that's why the American public voted to change it.
Let's leave it on that happy note where we have some
agreement.
agreement. And listen, despite all these disagreements that we have, I love having you on. You're smart, you know your stuff, and you're a stand-up guy.
But you keep interrupting me, Megan, so I can't explain
my point. Because you go on and on.
No,
I know how to keep you interesting. Trust me, you're in good hands.
I just know how to start.
Go. Great to see you. Breaking tonight, there are now watches and warnings as far north as North Carolina, and reports that a lot of folks on the ground in Florida are refusing to evacuate. This always happens as Hurricane Matthew marches toward Florida. We'll update you next. Plus, out of 9 major national polls, just one from the LA Times shows Trump beating Clinton in this election. LA Times Washington bureau chief David Lauter is here to explain why that is. Don't miss him. Well, we're now just 34 days away from electing the next president of the United States. And a series of recent polls show Hillary Clinton gaining ground. But one major survey shows Donald Trump still on top. It comes from a USC Los Angeles Times daily tracking poll. It shows Mr. Trump with a 4-point lead over Hillary Clinton. Joining me now, David Lauter, Washington bureau chief at the LA Times, and Tom Bevan, co-founder and publisher of RealClearPolitics.com. Great to see you both. So, David, in this poll, you found 3,000 people, and you just keep tracking samples within that same group. You don't do sort of the random calling that most pollsters do. Why?
Well, one of the big problems that polls have is that when you call a different sample every week or every other week or every month, you never really know whether the people that you're getting from one sample are comparable to the people that you got before. Maybe one week one side is much more enthusiastic than the other. Maybe something's going really well in the news and they really want to talk. So you'll have a surge of people who are Democrats, for example, one week, or Republicans another week, and you'll have a poll that bounces around, and you never really know, is it bouncing around because people are actually changing their minds or because you're just getting different people answering the phone?
So in this group of 3,000, were they people who started off Dems or Republicans or undecided? Is that factored in?
Oh, sure. It's a balanced mix that's weighted to be representative of the population as a whole. So you take this group that you've made representative of the population and you go back to them every week and you ask them the same questions. And that way you can ensure that when there's a change in the poll, it's an actual person changing their mind rather than just a change in who answers the phone.
Now, before I get to Tom, I understand this is an experiment of sorts for you, but how confident are you? Because your poll is, of course, an outlier.
Well, of course, we don't have a crystal ball, right? So you never really know. But this group that is at USC that's doing the poll with us, they did the same technique 4 years ago. They produced a very accurate poll. They were one of the only polls that got President Obama's re-election margin right. So we think they're doing a good job. They know what they're doing. And, there's no guarantee that we're right and other people are wrong. Yeah. But I think we've got a pretty good shot at it.
There's no guarantee in polling at all, as everybody knows.
That's right.
But Tom, what do you make of it? Because Real Clear Politics, your awesome site, has taken some heat for including this poll in the average of polls because, you know, the people argue it's an obvious outlier whose methodology is untested except for in one other instance.
Well, right. As David said, I mean, the people who are producing this poll did do the 2012 election and came out with a very accurate result. And they actually had Obama. They were on the high side of Obama's and margin of victory in that election. And that's what it turned out to be. So that's one thing. The other thing is, look, they partnered with a major media organization, the LA Times. And the third thing I would say is that, you know, look, our poll average has anywhere between 8 and 12 polls in it at any given time. Right now, we have 9 polls in there, and this is just one of the 9.
Well, what do you make of it, Tom, as somebody who aggregates these polls? I mean, how reliable would you say it is? I mean, do you think these are this is the secret Donald Trump victory that nobody's seeing?
I would say that, but look, I'm not willing to just say it's you know, completely off the board. I mean, just as one example, Megan, I mean, you have variance within polls. Just as one example, we had 2 polls come out in Ohio this week, one from Quinnipiac that showed Donald Trump up 5 points, and one from Monmouth that showed Hillary Clinton up 2 points. Right. So there's a 7-point gap right there. Now, it's a little more pronounced, and again, the LA Times poll has been more favorable to Trump over a more consistent period of time, but again, you do have variance within polls, and again, it's just one poll within a 9-poll basket of 9 polls that we have in our average at the current time.
Well, yeah, you're hedging your bets, but David's way out there, and it'll be fascinating. He can come back and do a victory lap if they get it right. Great to see you both.
Thanks.
Up next, live to South Carolina as Matthew takes aim. Breaking tonight, unprecedented steps underway ahead of what may be a historic hurricane landfall on the United States. Some anxious drivers filling up their tanks, emptying the gas station pumps. And for the first time ever, South Carolina's governor ordering interstate lanes reversed, emptying coastal cities. Correspondent Jonathan Seri live in Charleston, South Carolina for us tonight, where residents are bracing for the storm. Jonathan?
Megan, all of the pumps here at this gas station are shut down. You can see they're surrounded by caution tape. Note on the door here announces that they'll be closed at least through Sunday because this is a low-lying area prone to flooding. One of the areas that is part of the evacuation notice declared earlier today by South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley. State officials say there is enough fuel in the supply chain that people don't have to worry about finding gas to fill their cars at other stations. Some of the larger stations have been busier than usual as residents line up to top off their tanks. And when we visited a local supermarket, we found lots of people loading their cars with extra food and water. The manager of a local hardware store told us he got a flood of customers almost immediately after Governor Haley ordered an evacuation of coastal areas in and around Charleston and Beaufort. And to speed up those evacuations, state highway officials decided to reverse the eastbound lanes of Interstate 26. In other words, all lanes of I-26 are heading westbound away from the coast. If you get in the reverse lanes, you'll need to make sure you have enough gas to get to Columbia because no exits are permitted along the 100-mile route. Evacuees looking for a hotel may have to drive a bit further, going to perhaps Asheville or Charlotte, North Carolina, because most of the rooms are taken up here in South Carolina. Megan, back to you.
Jonathan Seri, thank you. We'll be right back. Already getting a lot of reaction to our interview with Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel, which we'll post on our Facebook page. Check it out, facebook.com/The Kelly File. And what do you think of his plan to raise the penalties on the young people who don't sign up? Thanks for watching, everybody. I'm Megyn Kelly. This is The Kelly File. See you tomorrow night.